What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
I'm back from Texas, and I'll tell you what, it was hot there, but it is freezing cold here. So I'm like in the middle going, where do I want to be? I also realized this morning that the whole entire time I was in Texas, I woke up every morning without a headache. I wake up every morning with a headache here. And what made me think about that was I woke up this morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and I was like, shit, my head hurts. And I was like, wait a minute. I didn't have any headaches when I was in Texas. And I don't think it's necessarily anything other than I have allergies here in the Pacific Northwest. And I don't think I had the allergies in Texas. So I don't think that's enough to make me want to move there. But let me tell you, the fam is really pushing for us to move out there. And it is hard to say no because I got a lot of good reasons to live out there. So that's where it be at. I have to talk about something really quick. And I'm sure you see it's national fucking news. But, and I know it's been like a week since this happened, but did you all see the fucking shit about the robbery at the Louvre in Paris?
Yeah.
Tell me that shit. First
I
of all,
started laughing. I'm not gonna lie.
but tell me that shit wasn't like straight out of Ocean's 11. Like it was like a movie, and then the fact that they haven't caught them.
Well, but what I saw. So the only reason why that I saw it is because of Oreo watching TV.
Oh.
Because I'd come home and I saw it, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Because that's the only time that I saw it. But they made a good point. They were like, with how precious all that shit is, good luck trying
You're
to sell it.
not going to sell it. No.
I mean, you can sell it on the black market, but even then, good luck.
Yeah, you're not going to sell it. But my thing is, the thing that blows my mind is I'm sitting there, I look at it and I'm like, you obviously, first of all, that was very much calculated and planned. But what really blows my mind is they showed a video from like surveillance from a different building. And they drove up in like this, like, I don't know what it's called, but like you climb into it and like raises you up to like a building, right? Like construction
like
workers.
Ladder?
No, it's not a ladder. Like construction workers use it. They like get into it and then it raises you. It's like a car.
The lifts?
It's like a lift. Yeah, that's what they used to get in. They used that.
And
so
nobody fucking
they were on the outside, pulled up, jumped into this lift thing, drove them up to like the second story or third story window, used like a handsaw to cut through the window, went in, basically stole these jewels and went out the same way. And there's video of them riding the lift back down. And the whole time, all I'm thinking is, and nobody at that time, they already knew because it took them 7 minutes. I think they had a full 7 minutes, right? So I'm sitting here going, they knew that this stuff was being actively stolen and not one of you thought to go out front to maybe see what's going on. And then they got on fucking motorcycles and rode away. And tried to light the lift thing on fire before they left, but they didn't get it. So they're trying to get like DNA and stuff and fingerprints. But I was like, I don't know. I can't decide if that was like brilliant or like shitty. Like, I don't know.
I think it was brilliant.
It was crazy, right? So anyways, that's kind of one of those, it's not murderous, but it is a true crime.
Impressive.
And it's really fucking impressive. Really impressive. But anyways, we are not here to talk about the Louvre theft. But we are here to talk about the very last spooky Halloween episodes that we were doing because this is the last episode for October. Does not mean that we won't continue to do them, but we will rotate them out. What we are talking about today is the LaLaurie Mansion. Now, what this is Madame LaLaurie. She was located in New Orleans. Mind your business how I say it because I know us Pacific Northwesterners say New Orleans and I know that's wrong. So I try to say New Orleans, but I sound like an idiot. So just mind your business. And this does happen in 1834. Now, we will be talking a lot about actually Madame LaLaurie. And the reason why is because this is her mansion. Okay. But you're kind of getting a twofold today. You're getting kind of like murderous, but you're also getting spooky. So here's some background. So Marie Delphine McCarty was born in New Orleans on March 19th, 1787. You hate old ones. This is the oldest we've ever done. Now, she was one of 5 children. Her father was Louis Barthélemy de Micarty, and her mother was Marie Jean Larrabal. I apologize for the names because I know I'm fucking butchering the shit out of them. Now, both parents were prominent in the city's European Creole community in New Orleans, and her uncle was actually the governor of the Spanish American provinces in the New Orleans area, and he was Esteban Rodriguez Miro. She also ends up having a cousin who does become the mayor of New Orleans at some point as well. Now, when Marie is 4 years old, the Haitian Revolution happens. And what the Haitian Revolution triggers is the slaveholders in the southern United States and the Caribbean start to be scared that there's going to be a resistance and a rebellion among their slaves. And so it kind of starts this weird, like, we need to make sure that we're prepared in case they want to rise up against us type thing. Now, in 1771, Marie's uncle is actually killed by his slaves. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say I have a problem with that. So this actually inspires the local Mina conspiracy in 1791. It also inspires the Point Coup conspiracy in 1795, and the 1811 German Coast Uprising. These are all things that happened due to Marie's uncle being killed by his slaves. I'm not really sure the details on it. I don't know if it's like it made slaves more willing to go after their slave owners, or if it was something that was more like we wanted to protect the slave owners. I'm not sure, but his death did trigger these different things that happened. Now, all of this was out of fear. So all these things were out of fear that the slaveholders had. So the slaveholders are the ones who are like, they're starting to become afraid because they were afraid that their slaves would like rebel and resist and basically take over. Because if you think about it, some slaveholders had like tons of slaves, right? So if they all banded together, they could absolutely take you out. So the slaveholders become scared, and instead of just being like, I understand the times, so we all have to put into perspective, this was in the 1700s, okay? 1700s, slavery was very much in pretty much all the countries had slavery. So it was a thing, but instead of being like, in my opinion, a person that's like, oh, maybe I should make sure that my slaves feel like they're being taken care of. I wouldn't own slaves, but if I did, that was, they decided that they would actually abuse their slaves worse to try to instill worse fear into the slaves to be like, don't fuck with me. Now on June 11th of 1800, the year 1800, Marie is 13 years old and she gets married for the first time to Don Ramon de Lopez y Anguilo. It's a very long name.
No, it doesn't shock me.
They have I know, but still.
Based
13,
on the time frame.
I know. Now he was
She probably should have been popping out babies based on that time frame.
Oh, she will.
At that time.
Now, he was a high-ranking Spanish royal officer, so she married this guy who, just based on the history, he was probably much older than her. And again, their names are so long, like so long back in the day. It's weird. Now, in 1804, so this is 4 years after she got married, so she's 17. After an American acquisition, Don Ramon, so her husband, was appointed to the position of consul general for Spain in the territory of New Orleans. Not like moving to Spain, but like there were parts of New Orleans that was like Spanish, like Spanish descent. That's where they lived. Now, he was called to appear in court in Madrid, though, in Spain, which probably had to do with, the way that it worked to deal with probably some shit that had to do with the territory of New Orleans being in the Spain consul and all this stuff. While Marie is traveling, or Marie does travel with him, she is also pregnant at this time. So she is 17, she is pregnant, but she is his wife. Don Ramon suddenly dies while in Havana. So he passes away. Now, a few days after his death, Marie ends up actually giving birth to their daughter, and her name was Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez y Angula de la Candelaria. That was her whole name. Could you imagine having to write
No, thank you.
that down? Longest name in the history of names. And she ends up actually her nickname, this little girl's nickname, ended up being Borquita, so they didn't actually call her all that. Now, Marie and her child do end up returning to New Orleans after her husband passes away. And here she is, a 17-year-old widowed woman, right, with a child. Now, in June of 1808, so this is 4 years after her husband dies, Marie is about 21 years old, and she marries for the second time. And she marries a man named Jean Blanc. Now, he was a prominent banker, merchant, lawyer, and legislator, so he was very wealthy. And it was at this time that they bought a home, that Jean bought a home on 409 Royal Street in New Orleans, and it was purchased for his family. Now, it later became known, this specific home became known as Villa Blanque because that was their name. Now, Marie ends up having 4 children with Jean. She has, listen to these names. Listen to these names. Her name is Marie. Her children's names are Marie Louise Pauline, Louise Marie Laure, Marie Louise Jean, and Jean-Pierre Paulin Blanc. So she named all of her daughters.
She's a poet and didn't know it.
No, literally, she has 3 daughters. She has 4 daughters. 3 of the 4 are named Marie. And one of them is named Louise with the middle name Marie.
It's like when Granny did Lady 1.
For all of them. Lady 1, 2, 3. Those are dogs, though. But yeah.
That's my point.
Constant. Now, Jean Blanc does end up dying in 1816. But you figure they married in 1808. So 8 years later, he passes away. So again, now you have Marie, now with 5 children, widowed for a second time, right? But again, he was a prominent lawyer, so I'm sure she had money. I don't know. Now, June 25th of 1825. So this is 9 years after Jean Blanc dies. Marie marries for the 3rd time. She marries Leonard Nicholas LaLaurie. And he was a physician who was 15 years older than her. So which again, her name, this is the last husband she has, LaLaurie. The mansion that we are going to be talking about today is the LaLaurie Mansion. Okay. So in 1831, Marie actually ends up buying a property at 1140 Royal Street, which is in New Orleans. She buys this completely on her own without her husband's name even being, which is so unheard of in the 1800s. She buys this piece of property. Her husband's name is not on it. She doesn't use any of his money, and it's just a piece of property. There's like nothing on it. She just buys this like corner lot. Then in 1832, Marie builds a 2-story mansion on this property, which she also, to this property, had attached slave quarters to the mansion because, again, this is during the time of slavery. Now, she ends up living at this home with her 3rd husband and 2 of her daughters. Of her 4 daughters, she has 2 of them, probably just because they're all older now. And she also, during this whole time, has remained a central piece of New Orleans society, meaning that she was like a socialite. People would gravitate towards her, right? They viewed her as like somebody who was of high whatever value or whatever. So on November 16th, 1832, Marie actually petitions to the First Judicial District Court for a separation from bed and board from her husband because things were not going very good after they moved into that 2-story mansion. Now, she made claims that Leonard had treated her in a way that them living together was unsupportable. And this was actually backed by her son and 2 of her daughters. However, remember, those children were not his children. So they probably would have said anything to please their mom. However, it was stated that even though she petitioned for it, she was granted the petition, meaning not divorce though, because they didn't do divorces. But she was granted this petition, meaning that her husband didn't have to live in the home with her. However, he does move back into the home by like 1834. He's in the home living there. So obviously their separation doesn't stay very long. Now, there are very different accounts of how Marie treated her slaves in her home. Now, some of these accounts are actually by people who were like living in the area at the time, and some are of people who have gone back and researched and all this stuff. But for the most part, it sounds like she was a fucking asshole. But in public, she put on like this performance. So it was reported that in public, she seemed to be relatively polite to the black population and acted as if she cared about the health of her slaves. So she would pretend in public that her slaves were being treated well, they were well fed, they were taken care of, but in reality, she was a complete dick, okay? Her slaves were reportedly haggard and wretched looking, like when they were seen in public, like they hadn't been eating, their clothes were ripped and torn, like they looked atrocious. For somebody who was as fucking wealthy as her, shouldn't have been the case. So between 1830 and 1834, there were 12 documented deaths of slaves in her Royal Street mansion. These do include Bonnie, who died February 7th, 1833. Now, she was a cook and she did the laundry in the house. She also had 4 children, and all 4 of her children also died. So Juliet died February 21st, 1833. She died at the age of 13. Florence, who died February 16th, 1833. She died at the age of 10. Jules died May 29th, 1833. Died at the age of 6. And Leontine died August 26th, 1831, and died at the age of 2. What's really crazy, though, is to think that the 13, 10, and 6-year-old technically could have been her slaves. They weren't just her children. They could have been Marie's slaves as well. Now, her mistreatment of the slaves had become the talk of the town, actually. And she had even been visited by a local lawyer to kind of check up on her and to remind her that there were laws and that she was required by law to have a certain level of upkeep of her slaves, meaning whatever they did, maybe you had to feed them, you had to make sure they were, I don't know what their fucking rules were, but they had laws of not mistreating the slaves, right? And she had been known around town to be a complete dick. So this lawyer comes to be like, hey, I just wanted to check in with you. I wanted to see how you're doing. And also, let me remind you, we have laws here of how we treat our slaves, which he didn't see anything at the time that seemed out of place. So he didn't have to report it or anything. He just kind of talked to her a little bit and then left. Now, rumors continued around the New Orleans area. One actually was from a neighbor of hers that had reported seeing an 8-year-old girl who was somebody who was enslaved in Marie's home, falling to her death off the top of the mansion, the roof of the mansion, because she was trying to run away from Marie, who was known to use a whip like all the time. Now, the little girl did end up getting buried on the grounds of the mansion, but here's how the story goes. So the story supposedly is that this little girl, who now the age is up for question, it has been disputed that she was either 8 or 12, but regardless, she was a fucking child, okay? And she was a slave of Marie's. So she was brushing Marie's hair and she hits a knot in her hair. And we all know that fucking blows asshole. But Marie gets so fucking pissed off because she hit a knot in her hair. Ma'am, just brush your own goddamn hair. That she ends up grabbing a whip and starts chasing the little girl, who ends up running through the house, runs onto the roof and runs off the roof and dies, which is fucking horrific. Now, this specific incident actually led to an investigation into the family, and they were found guilty of illegal cruelty and to their slaves, and they were punished. Their punishment was they had to forfeit 9 of their slaves. That'll just tell you.
That's your punishment.
That was her punishment. And also, that's 9 of them. She had more. She had more.
It should have been, you shouldn't have been allowed to have any.
You should have been,
slaves.
exactly.
And put in jail.
However, it gets better because these 9 slaves that they forfeited were essentially actually brought back to Marie through a family member because that's who she forfeited them to.
See, and that also shouldn't have been a thing.
Totally not a thing.
She should not have been able to pick who she forfeited
No,
it to.
they should, no. Now, there is another story of Marie keeping her cook. The story was that she kept her cooks chained to the stove and would starve them. So she had these cooks these slaves.
Bro, if I say cooks, I'd just fucking eat them.
Listen, I say cook, but I'm not going to say cook because she was a slave. It's not like she was like, oh, I'm a chef. No, she was forced to be a cook. But she would chain them to the stove and then starve them. They weren't allowed to eat. Now, again, remember, Bonnie, one of the women who died, was a cook at one time. And when Bonnie was the cook, apparently Marie would beat Bonnie's daughters if she tried to eat, if she tried to feed her kids or if her kids tried to sneak her food. She would always take it out on her kids, which is a really big mental tactic. It's a big fucking like mental fuck, because as a parent, you would never want anything to happen to your kids, right? So you harm her the most by harming her children, who also were young. Now on April 10th, 1834, there is a fire that starts at the mansion, and it actually begins in the kitchen. Now when the fire department shows
probably on purpose.
When the fire department shows up to put out the fire, they go in and they're like, oh shit, there's a fire. Oh, we think it's in the kitchen. So they go into the kitchen and they find a 70-year-old slave chained to the stove by her ankle. And the woman later admits to the fire department that she set the fire on purpose in an attempt to commit suicide because she was afraid that she was going to be punished, like every day, by Marie. And she said, because the ones that are taken to the uppermost room for punishment, they never come back. And so she was trying to commit suicide so she would get out of it. Now, this triggers a whole chain of events. So during this fire, bystanders, neighbors, they see this going on, right? And they're like, ooh, we need to get in that house. Because again, I know that it's hard to talk about slavery, but you got to remember these are the times. This is still the 1800s. This is just what happens.
Unfortunately, this is the norm.
Yeah, this is just part
not
of
maybe this amount of abuse. But
no, well, yes
well,
and no.
Yes,
some right.
But according to their area, that's not what you're not supposed to be like that,
right? So there's bystanders now, and they're seeing this fire, and they know that Marie and Leonard have slaves. They have 2 daughters that live with them. And so these bystanders basically go into the house to start making sure that people are okay, to help. So they get to this one room where it happens to be the slave quarters, and they're trying to open the door, but the slave quarters are locked. Like the doors are locked. They end up asking the LaLauries for the keys. And they're like, we need keys because we need, whatever. We need to get in there. We need to make sure people are alive. And if they're hurt, whatever. Which again, I'm sorry. The thing that I had the hardest time with this is you guys cared that much, but you didn't actually care that much because they're still slaves. Like you couldn't treat them like humans, but yet now you care. Like it's just, right. I don't understand. I'm not understanding this whole thing, but this is just how it happened. Now they end up being refused keys. The LaLauries were like, yeah, we're not giving you shit.
Yeah, and I would have been like, that's not your fucking decision.
Well,
okay.
And the LaLauries actually locked themselves in their own room as well and refused to come out. And these bystanders are like, fuck that. So they actually end up breaking down the doors.
I fucking would have.
Now, when they go in, they find 7 people horribly mutilated, and they are suspended by their necks in this room. Their limbs had been torn and stretched. They had been imprisoned there for months, and they were all still alive. They were not dead. They were tortured.
That's when people say sometimes death isn't the worst thing that can happen to you.
Right, because they were still alive. Could you imagine? I mean, you think you have torn and stretched, you've torn limbs because you had been stretched. Like you had somehow, some way they had literally torn your arms, like not off your body, but torn them apart. And you're just left like that. And you are suspended to a wall by your neck, not enough to kill you, but probably enough for your toes to touch the ground. You know what I mean? Like you can't move anywhere. That's what they found. So one of the people who happened to break into the LaLaurie's home and into these quarters that was awful happened to be Judge Jean-Francois Canogi. I'm just going to say, I don't know. Francois Canon. Now, he had stated that he had found actually a woman in that same room who was wearing an iron collar and an older woman who had a very, very serious deep head wound. And she was 2 weeks. She couldn't even walk. The judge also stated that when he questioned Leonard, Marie's husband, he fucking said this, quote, and I got this from like the newspaper article that they wrote. So this is what Leonard said. Some people had better stay at home rather than come to others' houses to dictate laws and meddle with other people's businesses. Fuck off, Leonard.
Motherfucker, aren't you a lawyer? Like, what the fuck?
No, Leonard's a doctor. And that's the other thing. Leonard was a
Oh.
doctor. So imagine being
I
a,
forgot
first
the
of
lawyer
all,
was the other one.
imagine being a doctor and treating people that way. Second of all, imagine being a doctor and being
That's
sick.
probably how they're still alive.
That's what I was going to say is he's able to probably be able to do things that
He's able
most
to
other
keep
people
them
wouldn't.
alive.
Yeah, fucking torture. Now, it was also recorded that people found that day. So again, there was more than just those 7 people. There were other people that were found. So the people that were found in there, the slaves, they were emaciated, meaning they had been starved. They had signs of being whipped, multiple signs of being whipped, open gashes and closed scarred gashes. They were bound in extremely restrictive positions. So they were like chained to places where they couldn't hardly move at all. And most of them wore spiked iron collars, which kept their heads from being able to move pretty much at all. Once the news of this treatment got out to the public, okay, so there was the group of people that went in, and then obviously people start talking. You know, they start being like, holy shit, you'll never guess. We knew she was an asshole, but she's a fucking demon, right? And they're like telling the whole neighborhood, like, this bitch crazy. It became public rather quickly. And a mob of local citizens attacked the Royal Street Mansion. They went in and demolished and destroyed anything they could get their hands on. They literally started tearing her house apart. Now, during that time, while they're trying to tear down the house, Marie and Leonard slip out of the house and disappear. Now, police are called because this fucking mob is like destroying her home. And by the time the police get there, there is a ton of damage to this mansion. Like so much that the really only thing that was left were the fucking walls kind of standing.
Good.
So they're like, for reals. Yeah.
Also, whoever called the cops, you're a bitch.
For reals. Like,
Keep your
just let
fucking
it
mouth
happen. Now, Marie's slaves were then taken, right? So they're taken out of the home. Now, this is what I'm talking about. So y'all went into this house, tore this house to the fucking ground because you didn't like the way she treated her slaves. First of all, set them free. They were fucking tortured. Set them free. No. What do? Oh, we're going to bring them to the local jail and put them on display for everybody to see. Why? Because they wanted the town to be able to go and see and look at them and stare at them because they needed to convince themselves that this actually happened. So y'all didn't fucking care. Because again, ass backwards thinking. So in 1834, okay, still in 1834, Marie fled New Orleans with Leonard. They bounced out, which means that she never got held accountable for anything. Because she could have, had she stayed there, she would have been arrested. She would have. However, I don't know if she would have gone to jail because she already got.
Well, she was also a woman.
Well, and she was already found guilty of mistreatment once, and she only had to forfeit the 9 slaves and got them back anyways. So I don't really think much would have happened. But regardless, she didn't get anything.
Yeah, I bet you those 7 were 7 out of the 9 that she got back.
Oh, I bet. It was documented. So they actually lost track of where she went. They weren't able to actually really find her, but they did find documentation that she first fled to Mobile, Alabama, and then she went to Paris. And I almost think at the time it's because Paris was probably a place that you could go and they couldn't make you come back to the United States, right? So Marie ends up staying in Paris. She lives with her mother and her 2 sisters. And at some point she ends up actually wanting to come back to New Orleans, but her family is fucking adamant, like, you're an idiot. Don't go back there. If you go back there, they're going to fucking arrest you because you literally are a shitty person and treated these people like absolute shit. So she eventually decides, fine, I'm not going to go back. However, there's like some weird things. Like there has been some stuff saying that they believe that her body was shipped back to New Orleans after she died because that's where she wanted to be. I don't know. They don't know. They don't really know. There are questions about when she died. So there is one story that says that she died in France due to a boar hunting accident. But there's also a thought that she might have died in 1842 because they found a cracked headstone that was discovered and it said her name on it. And it said that it was in 1842 that she died. But there's also French archives that state she died December 7th, 1849 at the age of 62. So if I was going to guess, I would probably guess the French archives more than anything because that's where she was living. But regardless, she dies. So that's all the background about this lady. Okay. Now we're going to talk just a little bit about the mansion, which was the whole reason why I started like researching because I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. You have to know the history. So the original mansion obviously did not survive the mob attack, and it was eventually torn down. But in 1838, a man named Pierre Trestor, he actually purchased the land and the dilapidated mansion, and he tore it down completely and rebuilt it. He rebuilt a mansion on that corner. Now, this mansion over the years has been used to be a public high school. Could you imagine? Where do you go to high school? Oh, the LaLaurie Mansion, where, you know, all these slaves were killed and it's probably fucking haunted as shit. Okay. A conservatory of music, an apartment building, a refuge for young delinquents, which we all know probably had horrible things happen in there as well, a bar, a furniture store, and a luxury apartment building. Now, I can personally tell you that I actually saw this mansion in person. I did. I was in New Orleans for a wedding and I got to go on a ghost vampire tour. So when you do this tour, you walk around all these different buildings because New Orleans has a really crazy, awesome, cool, detrimental, awful history, but it's really fucking fascinating. And so they bring you to these different homes and they tell you stories about them. So I know of the LaLaurie Mansion because I saw it firsthand. Now, there are some claims of hauntings in this mansion, but there's also claims that whoever owns the building has nothing but bad luck. Nothing but bad luck. An example of this, Nicolas Cage, the actor Nicolas Cage. He actually bought the mansion for $3.45 million in 2007. The actor Nicolas Cage, who is like fucking rich as hell, right? Because he's done all these movies, okay? He ended up having to let the mansion go into foreclosure and had to file bankruptcy in November of 2009. So 2 years after buying the mansion, he like lost a shit ton of money. Like so much so that he basically went bankrupt. And when he bought it in 2007, he was worth a lot of money. It's currently owned right now by a guy named Michael Whalen, who is I think he's a rich oil man. You know, where the oil, all you oil richies, that's you. Now, it is said specifically that anybody who's owned the house out of all the times, they either lose their sanity, their wealth, or their health, or all three. Like one of the people actually ends up committing suicide after buying the home. Another person loses all of their livelihood after buying the property. That home has never been owned by somebody that didn't lose something in some sort of way. So I haven't checked up on Michael Whalen because I don't know who he is, but he bought it in 2010. So I don't know if he's alive, if he's not alive or whatever, but he used it supposedly when he bought it. He used it as a vacation home for his family, which also it's not a vacation home. I mean, it is, but it's a fucking that's a big ass vacation home. People have also reported hearing shrieks and screams, moans, the smell of burning flesh, chains dragging. Some have said that they have seen a black man with chains walking throughout the corridors, and some have said that they have seen a white woman with glaring eyes, which they believe to be Marie. Now, when the house was a school, which again, fucking weird, it was said that a woman ghost who was believed to be Marie would grab the girls in the school and scratch them and bruise them. And now it's a fucking vacation home for some guy. So this is the reason why I had to give you all the background, because the LaLaurie Mansion has, over the years, the stories of what happened in that mansion have gotten like more gruesome. But when you look at the actual history, it's fucking awful. Totally awful. But it's like it gets embellished a little more. But it is considered a haunted mansion. And it is one that a lot of people have seen because it is right in the French Quarters in New Orleans. So if you are, if you go to New Orleans, you're probably going to the French Quarter, you're going to see or walk by or whatever the LaLaurie Mansion. When I was on the tour, the ghost tour, our tour guide told us that people have been known to go up and like take pictures like in front of the building or whatever. And she said most of the people who would be taking pictures, they end up having a ton of bad luck. So she had told us, she's like, you're more than welcome to go up to the building, and in front of it, like on the walk, because there's like a walkway around it, like a sidewalk. She's like, there's a lot of people who will go and stand in front of it and take pictures, she said, but most of them always like report back like, oh my God, you'll never guess. Either they have something happen on their trip, like one person, they went on this tour, they did all this stuff, and then she had told them the same thing, like, you know, you can take pictures in front of it, but they say anybody who even goes near the building, touches the building, has bad luck. This person did, they lost their camera, their wallet, and something else on that trip. Or like another person went home and one of their family members died. So it was like, there's these things that happen. And so I did not. I chose to stay on the opposite side of the street.
You didn't take the fucking picture.
No, I was with my mom. I was with grandma, and we both looked at each other and said, yeah, we'll just look. I didn't even take a picture of the home because I was like, ooh, I don't want to be, again, I don't want to be the one that like the demons. No. So
you don't want to be the reason why our family has bad luck.
No. But the fact that a lot of people are like, there's no way it's haunted because it's not the original home. And I'm like,
it's the grounds.
It's the grounds. Right. They found bodies buried.
I'm shocked nobody reported the little girl that got buried on the grounds.
So they ended up doing after they knew that after they knew that Marie and Leonard had disappeared and the house was basically demolished, they ended up walking the grounds, and they did find at least 3 bodies buried on the grounds as well of people, and one of them was the 8-year-old little girl. So they did find her. But
no, I know, I'm saying people who have reported hauntings, I'm shocked they haven't
reported like a little girl. You know, there was so much horror in that house that it's like
I wouldn't blame the spirits.
Me neither. I mean, and
they've
again,
got enough hatred to fucking fuck somebody up, in my opinion.
I know. And you know what's really crazy?
And if her spirit's there too, they're gonna have to deal with her spirit.
I know, and she's a mean one. That's what they're saying, is that there's a lady that haunts that house that is mean as fuck. However, there is another. There was a medium that went there to the house, and she said she did not sense any evil spirits. She only sensed like not happy but content, like playful spirits. So there is that too, but I don't know why there'd be any playful spirits there.
Hell no.
I have no idea. If you're ever in New Orleans, this is not the kind of place that you can go tour. It's not the kind of place that you can do in that stuff. However, what you can do is you can go on the ghost tours, or you can just go to the actual address and you can see it. Because it's, like I said, it's in the middle of the French Quarters. And again, I'll give you the address if you would like to know it. So the address, again, if you ever want to go walk by it, is 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans in the French Quarter. It's on a corner. It's a pretty building. Honestly, it's pretty, but don't touch it. Don't take pictures of it. Don't take pictures with it. Don't knock on the door, because them evil juju vibes are coming to get you. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to tell you. I'm sorry that it wasn't a spookier ending to our spooky October Halloween episodes. But I did think it was kind of a good way to go out, because it talks a little bit about fucking murder and atrocious bullshit and an asshole slave owner. And it does talk about haunting. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. If you like the things that you hear, if you like what we're talking about, make sure you're following us. Thank you so much for listening to us talk about the LaLaurie Mansion today and about how big of a piece of shit Marie LaLaurie was. Until next week. Catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.